Hello everyone, I'm Paul Thewlis and welcome to this Wisdom of Hindsight business webinar by Two Wise Heads. It's a collaboration between me and Rob Chiaroli, who today will take us through his methodology to help you set up a high-performing and effective team, whether that's a partnership of two or a business with many team members. Hi Rob.
Hi Paul, and hello everyone online. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen in today. I'm looking forward to presenting my methodology that's a culmination of more than 20 years in managerial and leadership roles over the next 30 minutes or so. So I hope you've got your lunch and removed any distractions. What I'll be doing is providing you some background and then going through the model that I use that brings it all together.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that, Rob. As teamwork takes such a dramatic impact on business performance. But before we do, we should cover some basic housekeeping. We want these webinars to be interactive, so we'd love you to send us a question through at any time, or you can wait till our Q&A session at the end. To do that, you'll see a box on the top right-hand side of the screen, like this one. Just type your question and we'll answer it during the webinar, or Rob will follow up with you later. I'll remind you that a replay of the webinar will be sent to you after the conclusion, along with Rob's slide presentation. So don't try and get down all the details, just note down any jewels of information or immediate actions that you find important. So, Rob, what sort of teams are we talking about today?
Well, Paul, this process and methodology I'll be presenting can be adapted to any team situation, whether we're talking a partnership of two, for example, a business partnership, or teams of three or more. In essence, wherever a team is assembled to achieve a goal, it might be a sporting goal, a sales goal, a construction project, an event of some sort, essentially any project that requires more than one person. So it has a broad application. We can look at the transformation of the Aussie cricket side as an example. That's quite apt at the moment. 18 months ago, they were in a bit of turmoil. Results weren't happening. There was disquiet among the players, and they ended up changing their coach. Now they're world champions, and the players themselves haven't really changed. The new coach, it seems, has changed the mindset of some or all of the individuals and got them working as a unit. Each has their specific role. Each player respects and trusts the other players to do their part while focused on the ultimate prize. And it's worked beautifully. So my methodology and process sets out how that could be achieved.
Okay, so Rob, let's perhaps start with the obvious. Why is a functional team so important?
Well, as you mentioned, Paul, having an effective team that gets results can have a dramatic effect. What we'll focus more on today is the impact that has on a business. Nowadays, it's almost impossible to avoid being a member of a team. If you're not officially in a team at work, then more than likely you interact with one in some way or another. A team can achieve great business results. Just like the saying goes, many hands make light work. So one of the first reasons why a team is important is that results are achieved more efficiently by sharing the workload and the responsibilities. Secondly, having more people involved, the results are achieved more rapidly. One of the consequences of not having a team and relying only on one person is that if something happens to that person, then that project or the client interaction stops and the business is at risk of losing that project or the client. You might imagine the Aussie cricket side with only one key bowler or even two, and one doesn't perform on the day. They actually had 4 key bowlers. Through a team effort, others can take over and manage the situation in that other person's absence. The third core factor from my experience in a sales team, for example, is that some healthy competition is always great for business as it creates a drive for results.
I notice you said healthy competition, Rob.
Yes, Paul, that does need to be emphasised. When it's healthy, every individual feels motivated to perform better and contribute to the team's results and the business gains. If it's divisive, then it tends to fragment and stifle the results.
That's an area no doubt you'll cover off during the webinar.
Yes, it is, Paul. Now, if we go through to the final core factor that I've got listed there, I wanted to mention for why having a functional team is great in business is that as a result of the social interaction and learning and development that occurs as a result of the team members sharing their knowledge and bonding with each other, turnover is reduced and employees retain much longer. One of the greatest inefficiencies of a business is that created through people leaving and having to recruit and train new people, not to mention what's lost in terms of the client relationships.
Yes, I've heard some pretty high estimates for what it costs per employee turnover.
Yeah, there are both tangible and intangible costs, but even if we look at simple tangible-based estimates that I've seen average cost per employee of over $70,000 in Australia to retrain someone new. Supervisory roles can be closer to $110,000, and I can advise you that within the pharmaceutical industry, which I was part of for over 2 decades, the cost of replacing a sales rep alone was over $150,000, and I'm sure that's a lot higher now. So yes, it's a big imposition on a business to lose and replace staff. I'd like to now present what I consider to be the 3 key fundamentals for an effective team. Firstly, the team needs to comprise people that contribute individual skills and knowledge. It's the synergy where the collective whole is greater than the sum of its parts, as Aristotle quoted, that results in a team working well together. Secondly, having team members in harmony and a positive attitude is critical. If a team members aren't working well together, then the results won't materialise. And finally, and very importantly, the team must understand their common goal. Team members need to be clear why the team exists and what the purpose of the team is. In the absence of any of these 3 fundamentals, it's likely not everyone in the team will have a positive experience and the effectiveness is reduced.
Yes, a common goal is paramount in a business, and a well-balanced team to deliver that is essential. I presume they're all part of your methodology, Rob, which you're going to take us through?
Yes, they are, Paul, but before I do that, I think it's important to go through some basic behavioural psychology principles, as they form a crucial skill that team leaders need to be aware of and constitutes a core level of knowledge needed by team leaders. Aspects of self-awareness, communication, and what motivates people is really fundamental to putting together an effective team. So good team leaders recognise that if they are to build effective and successful teams, then they need to understand and look after the needs and the well-being of each team member. This is part of the what I call the emotional contract that's formed between the team manager or leader and the members of the team. When they know that they're being looked after, they usually give their best in return. One of the common principles still being used today to understand individuals' needs are Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which he presented back in 1943. In his theory of human motivation, Maslow contended that we strive to meet our most basic needs first and then transition through a set of higher needs, as you can see in this diagram.
Now that's something I remember from years ago, Rob. Not 1943 though.
Yes, Paul. And look, it's still very up to date, and in fact, it's been the basis of a number of motivational models since then. So we'll go through some of those later. As you can see in the diagram, there are 5 levels, with the lower levels representing the more fundamental needs, and the upper levels representing the growth or being needs, with the ultimate need for self-actualization.
Okay, so I've always wondered what that term self-actualization actually means.
Good question, Paul. The way I describe self-actualization is it's a period or a position in time when you have fulfilled your potential and have become all that you can be. So that's a pretty tall order, and for any individual, it's measured in ways that's important to themselves. Now, for many, this is usually when you've reached a position of paying it forward or giving something back in some way. For example, quite a few people you read about end up doing charity work after they've settled their family and their retirement plans. Others gain a sense of self-actualization through mentoring young entrepreneurs and sharing their knowledge and experience to make their road easier than the one they have to travel. In the end, it's what expresses the ultimate fulfillment of potential of an individual. So if we continue now, in using Maslow's hierarchy, individuals are motivated by what their next level represents. Once a level is satisfied, you strive to satisfy the next level. Of course, life often dictates that people will travel up and down the pyramid depending on circumstances at hand. One can easily have to operate at level 1 again if you've lost a fortune in a bad business venture, for example. So as a manager or a leader, you need to appreciate where on the pyramid each member lies so that you can address the next level as part of your management of that individual.
Okay, so can you give us an example of that, Rob?
Sure, Paul. A lot of managers, for example, instinctively use financial carrots or salary increase as a way of motivating team members. The problem is that they usually have limits to what they can offer, and offering substantial financial incentives may not actually be possible. And in reality, the cash isn't going to be what every member is after. Money arguably addresses just level 1 in the hierarchy. By assessing what their individual team member is striving for, they can actually better represent more motivating and satisfying situations than just money-based incentives. For many people, being acknowledged and praised and raising their self-esteem, for example, has a far larger impact than a few dollars in the bank, particularly when that doesn't make a significant difference to their lifestyle in any case. You might consider, for example, the AFL footballer Gary Ablett Jr.'s move to the Gold Coast from Geelong a few years ago. He was quoted in the paper that it wasn't about the money, but rather the opportunity to build and lead a team. For him, it's the self-actualization element that motivated him more. Another interesting scenario to keep an eye on while still on the AFL will be to see what Patrick Dangerfield decides to do at the end of the season. Stay with Adelaide or move to Geelong, where he has family and friends he grew up with. Arguably, the third level of love and belonging may play a big part in his motivation here, and more so than the money, which is addressing motivation more at levels 1 and 2 of the hierarchy. So, look, in any team situation, it's important to identify what motivates each member, understand how they respond to feedback or praise, and what tasks suit their abilities and knowledge.
So how does one identify what motivates an individual team member, Rob?
Excellent question, Paul. This is where observation and communication come into play. I think the best way for me to simplify this for you all is to use one of the models that was developed in the 1960s as a consequence of Maslow's needs model. This was established by David McClelland, who proposed that we're all driven by 3 key motivators that we've learnt through our cultural upbringing and our life experience. And one of these 3 is our dominant motivating one. So the 3 motivators, as you can see on this chart, are achievement, affiliation, and power. And as you can see, each has certain characteristics that you can observe, and these can be identified by interacting with team members, observing the members' past actions, and even just by appreciating their personality and behaviours. By understanding and appreciating this, you can better establish how to set goals and provide feedback, and how to motivate and reward individual team members. You can also assign the right person to the right projects, those that suit their dominant motivator.
Okay, thanks, Rob. So that's a little sort of psychology refresher or psychology introduction for some. How does that all fit into your methodology?
Yes, Paul. Well, over the past 6 years that I've been coaching, when it comes to teams, I've found that the three most common frustrations that are expressed to me centre around the inability to participate and interact by team members, the friction that develops within a team, and the lack of clear expectations and engagement towards a positive result. So the model that I'll present now in a summary form is a robust, deep and a practical approach for leaders to help teams be successful from start to finish. So let's look at what situations I've found that this approach is useful and the benefits that it provides. Firstly, it's great when you're setting up a team for the first time, as you have control of the process from the start. The second situation is where your team really isn't performing as well as it should, and you need to change things, but you're not sure what they are.
So I expect the second situation is a bit more challenging then.
Yes, Paul. Naturally, in this case, it is a bit more involved and difficult as you have established team members and personalities to deal with. However, the process is the same, and it's just a matter of being sensitive that change is always more difficult when you're starting with a clean slate. In terms of benefits, this framework or process is proven to deliver high-performing teams. There are definite improvements seen in terms of efficiency and effectiveness, and communication and relationships are shown to improve with teams moving strongly towards the business objective. So in this slide now, I'm going to lay out the elements of my team's framework. These are the areas that I take team leaders through, with each element having a series of tasks to complete. First thing we do is define the values of the team and the behaviours that express those values. Then, just as importantly, the values and the behaviours that the team won't tolerate. Setting the goals is the next step, using the SMART process and defining a clear time period and measures for success. If we don't have a team in place already, then recruiting the right members is the next step. We go through the skills and the knowledge that the team requires, the character traits that are needed, and how we go about the whole process of recruiting. It's then crucial that the roles are clearly defined. What needs to be done, what skills are required, and who will be assigned to do that role. Once all of those aspects are covered, we can then look at what team members require from each other and how each of them will meet those expectations.
Okay, so those seem quite manageable and logical aspects of setting up a team. I'm looking forward to this next one though, Rob.
Yes, building chemistry. This is the one that I find takes the most effort, but just as likely yields the most reward in terms of building an effective team. It's all about developing trust and respect among the team members. There's a lot of self-awareness and building an understanding of your fellow team members involved in this facet of the model. I'd suggest that there was a lot of this happening within the Aussie cricket side over the past 18 months. I often undertake behavioural profiling exercises with teams, such as extended disc reports, so that the leader knows his or her team very well and the team know each other. We don't have time today to go through how effective a full extended disc report can be for teams, but I will be spending a whole seminar on this topic in 4 weeks' time. I also have a short MP3 audio file on the topic on my website resources page for those of you who'd like to know more about this in the meantime.
Yes, I found the report you did on me really useful and enlightening. It certainly has helped me to read other people and communicate more effectively as a result.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, it's something I recommend to all my coaching clients just for their own self-awareness and interactions with those they're close to. Whether it's for personal or business interactions, the clues you pick up once you know what to look for are outstanding. Apart from extended disc, there are also a number of team activities that we can take members through as well, so that they get to know each other both in a work and a non-work setting. It's all about developing comfort, trust, and rapport. Now, next on the list is setting the course. This is all about establishing milestones. What is the measure for success, and when is that milestone due? The leaders, I then encourage them to set their sights on some early wins. Now, it's these early wins that keep morale and motivation up. So planning for some early wins is a great way of keeping the team on track. Again, these are identified as part of the process. They're timed and plans put in place to make them happen, along with assigning a responsibility to someone to keep these early wins clearly in focus.
Yeah, some projects may have long deadlines, and I can imagine that may frustrate some team members if there's no feedback for an extended period.
That's right, Paul. Like any goal, it's more motivating to break it up into smaller chunks so that you're reinforcing achievements as you go. The next part of the methodology is to anticipate risks, what their impact might be, the probability of that event happening, how to avoid it, and what to do if it does happen. By doing this what-if analysis, it actually increases the confidence among team members as they feel that risks are reduced as a result. Communication throughout the project is important, so we discuss how the team will get together, where and when. And again, this planning means members know that discussions will be held to keep the project on track. Next, as part of the program, is acknowledgement. What or who needs acknowledging, how it will be done, and again, by when. And then if any setbacks occur, we need to record what happened, when, who was involved, what damage it caused to the team at the time, how we resolved it, and by when. Moving things forward is part of the program where the leader records impressions of conversations and interactions of team members at meetings and so on. Essentially, we're assessing whether they're all pulling their weight with all the aspects that we've covered so far earlier in the model.
Okay, so now we come to the motivational strategies.
Yes, Paul, this is where we incorporate the knowledge gained from eDisc or the other models with observations and interactions to determine what actually motivates each team member. We set out here what each member requires in terms of feedback, encouragement, development, and general communication practices to get the best out of them within the team.
So I take it the next two elements relate to when you lose or gain new members to the team.
That's right, Paul. Transitions in and out is about how to make that a seamless process with as little disruption as possible. We need to expect that changes like this can occur, so we plan for it just in case. I've had a client recently go through this, and it caused quite a bit of turmoil as he wasn't fully prepared for it. What this covers is how are leaving team members acknowledged, their knowledge captured, and how do we bring that to new members so that the project doesn't falter. So that's the 15 steps, and all that's really left is the review a leader should do on a regular basis with the team. You know, what lessons have been learned, what changes need to be implemented, by when, and by whom.
Well, that's a very comprehensive tool, Rob. How easy is it to implement?
As I mentioned in the webinar description, building effective teams is not easy. It's actually hard, and it can be very frustrating. That's why we're holding this webinar. There are mountains of books on the topic, and a Google search will deliver you thousands of links to follow. Research, though, consistently shows that a team produces better results than an individual, but it's each individual's contribution that produces the team results. So both the individual and the team need to be nurtured to get the best results. And so it's important to put effort in and get it right. So what I've presented here is a well-tested methodology that does work when it's implemented. It's not a magic bullet by no means, and it's not about me putting your team together. It's about me guiding you as we work through those 15 elements and you create a highly effective and efficient team delivering on the business goals.
Yeah, I think nothing comes easy these days in business. So how can people determine if this framework and the methodology is needed for their team?
Okay, yeah, well, I've developed a quick team strength tool, which I'm happy to share with the listeners. Hopefully on the screen you will see a download, a link, so you can all directly download it from here if you want. Otherwise, it is on my website, grapestogrange.com.au, in the resources section. It's, as you can see, 15 key questions to ask about you and your team, and the result will give you some guidance as to the areas to work on and where my framework can actually be applied and is most useful.
Yeah, so we're just using a little bit of a new technique there, the pop-ins to our webinar, just to give you quick access to some information. So if you don't see that on your screen, perhaps you might just leave a message in your chat box on the side there, just to let us know whether you've got that or not. And if not, we can send you the information later on. Okay, so Rob, so that looks like a well-structured program that anyone leading a team can use to drive for better results. Just if people want to sort of contribute some questions now, but while we're waiting for the questions, I believe you have a few other similarly structured programs you offer.
Yes, I do, Paul. I'm building on them all the time as I have clients identifying the issues that they're facing. So here's a list of the most popular programs that I facilitate and I coach people through. Strategic planning is a core part of any business, and having a process to follow, whether it's what I present in my framework or other strategic planning models, it's something every business owner should undertake. Conflicts occur in every business, whether they're internal or external, so having a structured process to follow is a great way to manage anything that comes up. One of the most daunting experiences that I get called for is for someone newly promoted into a managerial role. The first 3 months establishes their position in that role, so it's crucial they have a clear plan on what needs to be accomplished. My framework sets out the core aspects any new manager needs to cover, so it optimises their effectiveness in their new role. The next two programs I've got on screen, they're all about implementing communication, motivation and influencing strategies for maximum impact. And finally, my flagship, I call it the Leadership Dashboard, which is a very comprehensive program that guides leaders through all the elements we've covered today and in the other frameworks. It's a Bible for leaders to keep them on track with their leadership. And many of these programs actually dovetail into each other, so they can be sequenced according to the needs uncovered.
Well, that sounds some great programs there, Rob, but how long do they take to complete?
Well, depending on the issue, Paul, they vary in implementation from a month to 6 months, depending on the depth of the issue and how quickly a solution is being sought. Each is structured much like the Teams framework that I've shared today, with separate elements to be completed with clear outcomes. The Leadership Dashboard is obviously the most comprehensive one. So I'm happy to discuss any of these in more detail with anyone interested, so just email me or phone me.
Well, that's great, Rob. So here are some questions that have come through. Firstly, from Anne. She asks that you mentioned DISC, D-I-S-C. What about Myers-Briggs and emotional intelligence scales?
Yeah, thanks for bringing those up. And yes, I did mention DISC, and that's what I have qualifications to not only implement but also train people. However, I've done Myers-Briggs and others like Wadsworth that Chandler and McLeod now use in their recruiting, and they all provide the information to individuals and managers to better identify what drives and motivates people they interact with. Interestingly enough, all three that I've mentioned have been largely based on Maslow's original hierarchy of needs theory, as well as the teachings of Carl Jung, also from the 1940s, and as has emotional intelligence movement as well, which I too support very strongly in my coaching. In the end, it's about finding and using a tool that helps you as a leader become more self-aware and more aware of what motivates and drives your team members so you can get the best out of them.
Now, you'll be doing an eDisc webinar soon, won't you, Rob?
Yep, in fact, I think I mentioned in 4 weeks' time on April the 28th, as I thought that's a perfect run-on from this webinar. So we'll actually go through the tool and how it's used to understand and communicate effectively with everyone you deal with. We'll go through how useful it is for personal interaction, as we've discussed today, to understand your fellow colleagues and team members, how to use it to recruit the right staff, and even how effective it can be used in any sales situation to present your product in the most desirable way to your client.
Right, so another question here from David, who asks whether this methodology works with all types of teams, e.g. sports, sales, and what about a partnership of two people?
Oh, another great question. Thanks, David. Yeah, look, it can work, as I mentioned, in all situations of 2 or 22 or more. We just focus on different elements of the model more than others, depending on the situation. With a team of 2, it can firstly seem an easier process. However, depending on the personalities involved, in my experience, it can actually be the most confronting. But the process does keep everyone on the right track. So 2 completely opposite personalities, it can actually be easier to allocate the tasks of the project, as they would have differing skill sets and abilities and attitudes. So when you have similar people, though, it can actually be more of a challenge, as there are usually project tasks that neither can adapt to. But the process brings that all out so that they can delegate someone else. In sports, you mentioned sports, it's interesting as in these teams they usually comprise very determined individuals, and you'd think they would all cooperate. However, while they have a set goal, they still are individuals, and the team leader needs to allow for that. We've just witnessed the Aussies winning the Cricket World Cup, and for example, I noticed in the paper yesterday a photo of a group of the players still partying as the sun come up, but more than half the team actually weren't there. So the others have celebrated too, but for them that doesn't mean an all-night session. So management needs to appreciate that and not undermine the team by setting expectations for all to follow. Another example I often use when it comes to sports is the Australian women's 8s rowing team. You might recall Lay Down Sally, I think is the name they gave her. Partway through the race, she just dropped her oars and flopped backwards while the others continued rowing. So there were other issues she was dealing with beyond the goals of the team. By not being fully aware of those issues, the team suffered. So yes, the robustness and the depth of this model can make sure those aspects have a greater chance of being seen and then addressed. And then I think you mentioned sales as well, David. This is to me, this is a classic situation where having a process like this in place is super important. Firstly, so you recruit the right people in the first place. For example, if it's mainly a cold calling sales situation, then you need to recruit people comfortable to receive rejection, as success rates are usually less than 5%. Likewise, if the gung-ho salespeople tend to get bored and turnover is high, if the product requires a more service-based, nurturing or relationship-building type of approach. So knowing what skills and attitudes are required is important. And if you already have a team, then this model allows you to identify who is best for what role, where the gaps are, and then how to fill those gaps while everyone keeps on the right path. So I hope that answers the question and shows you how versatile this model can be.
Right, so Debbie wants to know what the SMART process for goal setting is, Rob.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Hi, Debbie. Yeah, look, SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timed. It's a very commonly used process in business to set goals, and it structures the goals in a way that you are more likely to successfully achieve them. Again, I've got an MP3 audio file you might like to listen to in the resources section of my website, grapestogrange.com.au, on how to successfully set a goal. So thanks for the question.
Well, thanks, Rob. Thanks for answering those questions. That's all we've really got time for today. We're getting close to our end point. If there are any other questions, please email them to Rob, and he'll also follow up any that have not been answered today. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for your attendance, and we hope that you join us in 2 weeks for our next webinar, which is on websites, to build yourself or not to build yourself. That's the question. Rob will interview me on the business factors you need to consider about building your website, not so it's the technical side, but the business circumstances that are important there. So I hope you'll join us then. So just visit our Two Wise Heads website to register. We look forward to seeing you in a fortnight. So it's bye from now.
See ya.